Complete Quarterback. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and tonight I'm joined by a guy who I would consider a regular. Every year I have him on, and it's always a great conversation. I'm joined by Tabor Academy head football coach, friend of the show, Jeff Moore. Coach Moore, good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me, John.
Hey, anytime, man. Appreciate the time as always. And we are coming to you tonight on Wednesday night, and this is going to be our new night for the remainder of the offseason. Both the coaches chat and the recruiting visit will be coming to you on Wednesday nights for the remainder of the offseason. And Coach Moore, it's already May, man. It's hard to believe. You end the season, you think you got all this time to do all these things in the offseason. Next thing you know, you blink, you're into the spring. Next thing you know, you blink, you're into camp and into the season. How's your offseason been so far, and how has this offseason been for Tabor so far?
Good. We're in a really good spot right now. We do a really good job with our strength coach on campus in the winter with, I'd say, a vast majority of our guys in that program, a big number doing other sports as well. And then in the winter, our players are really split into three different things. We got a handful doing baseball. We have a big chunk that are doing lacrosse, and then the rest of them are all doing track and field. So they're all doing something for the spring to help them. I think it's really critical for all these guys to compete in some capacity, whether it's in one or two other sports outside of football. And I think it's important for them to develop, whether it's by playing another sport in the weight room to help get bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah, it's so vitally important. And obviously, multi-sport athletes, particularly for NEPSAC programs and private schools, is really important because you don't have 65, 70, 80 guys playing. Your guys are not only going to play for you, they're going to play other sports as well. But as you mentioned, college coaches want that. You've been there. You've been a recruiting coordinator. You've been a Division I college coach. How important is that for guys to have that multi-sport experience on their athletic resume?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's mandatory, but we just see a lot of the best athletes are doing more than just football. And I think it's important to learn to be a great teammate. I think it's also great sometimes to play another sport where you might not be like the cream of the crop, where you have to understand how to be a role player a little bit, how to be a supportive teammate, because there's so many kids who are the be all end all on their high school team or the number one option, the number two option. And then when they go to college, it could be the first time ever where they're either getting no snaps as a freshman, they're getting redshirted, or having a more minute role. So, to be in another sport and maybe not to be that go-to person can really pay off in the long run, just because now they've played multiple roles in different sports. So when they move to college, the transition might help a little bit.
How would you categorize year one at Tabor? Obviously, you made the return to NEPSAC football last year in the ISL. How would you categorize year one? Would you categorize it as a success? We would categorize it as a success, but I've worn the coaching hat. I know that coaches view success differently than the media does. How would you categorize year one of your tenure at Tabor?
Yeah, I think it was a good start. We left a little bit of meat on the bone, and when we sat in our coaches meeting before the season, the way I sort of looked at it and described it to them, we are ultra talented, but we're also probably like the youngest team of the very talented teams. So, we had potential where we could hit this thing and go 8-0 in the regular season. We had potential where it could have been a 4-4 or 5-3 season, just because we had easily the youngest offense in the ISL. We started 3 freshmen. We started 2 sophomores. So we were super young. But those kids, it's not like they weren't battle tested before or anything like that, where Caden Drinkwater was a new freshman coming in, but he obviously had an extremely successful freshman year at Leominster. We had Trey Grant was a kid who might have played JV in a little varsity year before at Tabor and really grew a little bit more and was a dependable receiver for us as a true sophomore. And then we played 2 freshmen on the offensive line who, yes, were freshmen and young, but are extremely physically gifted, and Jacob Burns and Botan Varga. And then we were just lucky where we had a ton of senior leadership, with our 4 captains, the 2 on offense, Joel Alvarado and Tim Bankston, and then on defense, Rafael Montero and Perry Goodridge. So we were super young, but a ton of upside, which, leads us into a pretty positive outlook for this upcoming fall as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Tim Bankston obviously did a great job last year as your starting quarterback. Big shoes to fill going into this season. Talk about how that's gone. You have a new addition on campus that you hope steps up and fills those shoes.
Yeah, Timmy was great. Very good leader. Obviously he was a 2-year captain for us. He's also a captain on the lacrosse team as well. He's going to play both sports at Assumption. and he was super dynamic in multiple ways. So I think probably the most beneficial thing for us on offense is we could stay super balanced, where we had, arguably the best or one of the best running backs in New England, but we have a quarterback that ran the ball extremely, extremely well, having multiple games for rushing over 100 yards. And he could also throw the ball good enough where he had games where he threw for over 300, threw for 250 plus. So Timmy did a great job where every single snap he kept the defense on their heels. And then we're also really excited as well for our incoming quarterback, Peter Bork, who has very high upside. He'll be coming in as a sophomore, very, very good thrower. And, in my opinion, he's one of the best throwers in all of New England. So we're super excited about him. He's also a talented lacrosse player, just like Timmy. So I think there's a lot of upside. And our offense, the principles and values of what we do won't change, but maybe the percentage of some things we do will change a little bit.
And obviously you talk about the principles of your offense, and last year you talked about the fact that you were young at some positions, but you also leaned on your running game, and you ended up developing arguably one of the best running backs in not only Massachusetts, but in the entire region. Talk a little about Hugo and what he meant to your offense, and how's his offseason been. He was on with us on the recruiting visit a few weeks back. Obviously, had a lot of good things to say and was pretty happy with where he was at in his offseason. But talk about him and his maturation and what you expect from him coming up next season.
Yeah, Hugo was great for us. I'm pretty sure he led all of New England in rushing. He rushed for about 235 a game. And then on offense, I think we probably also led the region in rushing, where we rushed for around 335 a game, with Timmy rushing for just right around 90 yards. And then a couple of other guys having some spot runs here and there. With Hugo, super talented. He's big. He's a big physical back, which I think is a little bit different than some of the rest of the guys in New England. First game was really good, but I think a couple people had concerns where he had a couple fumbles early on the first game of the season, but then from there he hit the ground running. So, he had a game where he had over 400 yards on the ground, and he probably had, I don't know, another 4 or 5 games where he had somewhere in the mid to high 200s on the ground as well. So extremely smart, very good blocker, super, super physical, but athletic enough where he can make multiple people miss. So we're really excited about him. Also catches the ball pretty good out of the backfield. He had 4 or 5 touchdown catches on the season as well. So it'll be exciting to sort of see where he goes, but he's very smart. He's a great teammate for us, really good leader. And we're excited to see if he can sort of build upon his big junior year. He was co-MVP for the ISL, co-player of the year for New England for Class B. So he's a great kid, good player, really smart, good student.
You mentioned Caden Drinkwater earlier, who transferred in from Leominster High School. A good year for you guys. Big things are expected from him in the passing game. Talk about the rest of your skill group and what do you see from those guys in terms of their development as we head into the 2024 season?
Yeah, so at wide receiver, we got Caden, obviously, who's pretty long. He's fast, but he also has like elite ball skills, elite body control. So, he's arguably the best wide receiver in New England. He plays on the outside for us. Trey Grant plays the other side on the outside, who will be a junior this year, who's been here. This will be his 3rd year coming up, who's really grown and gotten a lot better, had a couple big catches throughout the season, really good run blocker. Demir Pfeiffer plays in the slot for us, also one of the best defensemen in New England for lacrosse, and he's sort of like lightning in a bottle. He's like a true 4.5 speed kid, and had some dynamic runs, took a jet sweep for over 50 yards for a touchdown this season, took some bubbles, had probably 3 or 4 big 40-plus yard touchdown catches throughout the season, including St. Seb's and BB&N in the bowl game. So we're really excited to see his growth and his role expand a little bit. And we have a really good, big, long, athletic tight end, Liam Huback, who's another kid from Massachusetts. He was at Tantascwa High School, and he came and repeated his junior year this past year. So those are the skill guys on offense. And then our offensive line, we feel really, really good about them. I thought we had one of the best offensive lines in New England last year. We graduate Joel, who's awesome for us, very good center and a big leader. But we return the other 4 guys with Jacob and Botan, who I mentioned earlier. Will Smith will kick over to center, who will be a senior this year, very talented kid out of Canada. And then Amon Williams will be a junior, who's a local kid from Randolph who did a good job. And then we have an incoming player from Marshfield, Grady Holmes, who we're really excited about, who'll probably play tackle for us too. So on offense, it's a really good group. We only graduated 2 guys, and then obviously at quarterback will be Peter, who we talked about briefly before. So, we had one of the highest scoring offenses in New England, averaging around 44 points last year, and we only graduate 2 guys. So we're really excited about that. Those 2 guys are a big hole, but we feel confident that the young men that are coming in will be able to sort of keep us rolling for where we left off at.
You are watching the Coaches Chat presented by Complete Quarterback. I'm your host, John Serenitas. And this week we are joined by Tabor Academy head football coach Jeff Moore. And again, this is our new night now for the rest of the offseason. We'll be coming to you on Wednesday nights with the Coaches Chat and the recruiting visit. A couple of weeks from now, we'll be talking about the showcases. It's showcase season. May has kind of sort of become showcase month up here, and we're seeing more and more showcases pop up. May 14th, of course, will be the Massachusetts Showcase Day for the ISL and private schools. You guys, I believe, are going 1:30 to 2:15. Talk a little bit about that. What can college coaches expect on Showcase Day on May 14th from Tabor?
Yeah, I think we have a really good group. So right now, I think we have 11 guys with Division I offers from the classes of 25 through 27. So last year, we didn't have as many guys, but we still had about 48 coaches on our campus. So my guess is we'll probably be somewhere between 60 to 100 college coaches here to see our guys work out for about 45 minutes. So the way it gets set up, and most of the schools are similar, but not everyone's the same. The first 10 to 15 minutes or so will be all speed and agility type stuff for all of our position groups. And then the last half hour or so will be more position specific, broken down, where the linemen will do about 10 to 15 minutes work of stuff. And then our skill guys will do work for about 10 minutes or so. And then we'll do routes on air for the last 5 minutes or so. So it's a great way to get to see all of our guys. We're really excited about it. We have a pretty talented group, which is great. And then most of all, it's for the players. So it's for them to get the exposure to as many schools as possible. We'll have schools from Alabama, Michigan, Penn State, Boston College, places like that, where most of those schools came last year, have confirmed they're coming this year, to super high academic schools like most of the schools in the Ivy League, and then to some amazing D2 and D3 places like Bentley and Assumption and Amherst College and Williams and Trinity and schools like that. So we'll have all schools from a lot of great different conferences, from a lot of great different levels, because a lot of people see prep school football and they might notice all the big time players that are at some of these schools, but we have super talented kids who will go on to play at every single level of college football. So, and the most important thing is that we give our kids all the exposure they deserve, and that we give them the options where they can find a school that's the right fit for them.
How important have these showcase days become now? Because we're living in a time with the transfer portal, and you were at UMass with Don Brown, where it's so much easier now for college coaches to dip into the portal and add experience and add guys that have played before. How much more important are these showcase days for high school kids as they try to get recruited in this challenging landscape?
Yeah, I think what's happening now is every single year, coaches want to see more and more kids get a live eval. And it's not just to meet and shake their hand, but it's be able to see them, if they're a skilled player, to be able to see them run, change direction, lateral quickness, acceleration for linemen, to be able to see their flexibility, their bend, their foot speed, their quickness, their change of direction. So what's great is, when you have school A, B, or C, and their main target on your roster is position X, they try to send their position coach from that position. So now they can have the best evaluation possible, or the most meaningful at least. Because what happens is these kids get caught in a trap all the time where it's like, hey, I'm probably an FCS kid, but I'd love to be a group of 5 kid, or I'm probably a D2 kid, but I'd love to be FCS, or whatever it is. Or, I'm going to play D3 football, but I'd love to go to these high academic places. And now they have like 12 to 15 schools all saying, we'd love for you to come to camp so we can work you out. But it's extremely unrealistic to camp at every single school that wants you to. So the great thing that we have from these showcases is if we can, if 80 to 90% of the schools that want us to camp can come see our kids work out live, and then at our showcase day, then they can say, hey, this kid we definitely like, we want to offer him, or this kid is in our top tier, we'd like to see him at camp. Or someone will say, you know what, we saw enough, this kid's not for us. So then, when I sit down with our kids, the week or two after that, we can formulate the best plan for them for the summer that makes the most sense, where they have the least amount of travel. Because for our guys, I typically recommend, if they're going into their senior year, 3 to 5 camps, somewhere around there, not too many. But we want to go to schools that like are worth the time of the cost to pay, the time to travel, and the commitment from their families to bring them there. So those things, we just want to make sure that they're going a realistic fit. So our showcase day has helped speed up some kids' recruitment, has helped knock some schools off that they know aren't a fit, and then have also condensed and made the most realistic plans for their summer. So that's the nicest thing. And then also it's just great for our kids to be able to work out in front of all these schools.
Yeah, I think it matters. And look, I still think there are coaches out there that want to build programs organically from the bottom up with high school kids, bring them in, develop them, keep them. That's easier said than done, though. And how have you navigated that? Because a kid could commit to one school, go there, and a year later they're in the portal and they're looking to go somewhere else. How have you navigated helping your guys? You mentioned part of your process in terms of helping them, but how have you navigated these trying times by trying to help them pick the right school? Because now more than ever, Jeff, it's really important that you get it right with where you commit to, because if you don't, it could lead to a situation where you end up playing in multiple places.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest differences with the portal is almost all these schools were signing 25 high school kids a year before COVID. That was like status quo. They'd sign 25 kids, 20 to 25. They'd be all high school kids or 95% high school kids. And that was status quo. And then when the portal came and when COVID happened, like that first year or two, it like got totally sliced. And then the NCAA had a rule where they could sign more than 25 kids as long as they had kids coming out for whatever reason. So now, instead of 25, you're seeing a lot of schools that are somewhere between the 25 to 35 range. And I would say the biggest difference is instead of 25 high school kids, a lot of these schools are somewhere between like 12 to 22. So, and I would say more of the big power 4 schools now are signing more high school kids. And then that group of 5, they're somewhere between like this low double digit mark. So for our kids, I think what's important is when they get offered by a school, they have to know that's really how that school feels, that they can actually go there. And they have to understand if they feel that's the right match for them, they need to get on the campus, meet their staff. And then if they think it's the right fit, they got to make decisions a little bit quicker now because there's less high school spots going. And then what they don't realize is these kids who are going somewhere, like they early enroll and then they're in the portal after spring ball, which is chaos. Kids are there for 1 year. They're in the portal. Like when a lot of schools are looking at those kids as transfers, they're counting them as high school spots still, even though it's not a high school kid. So, if player X goes to UMass and he redshirts and then he goes in the portal and then school B takes them as a transfer, a 1-year kid who still has 4 years of eligibility and hasn't played a down of college football, they might be taking that kid from the high school slot on their recruiting board instead of a high school kid just because they're still so young and they might not be an instant impact. So there's so many different things they're working through. And I think the most important thing is that each kid working with their coach, whether it's a public school coach or the private school coach, and formulates a plan for them in the spring going into their senior year or the winter of their junior year and things like that. And they have to figure out what schools are most important to them, what schools that are important to them have mutual interests. And when they're offered by those schools, being able to go see them, make a real connection. And if they think that's the fit, to make that decision. But they got to make sure that they know it's a fit before they pull that trigger. Where some of these kids nowadays are saying, hey, I'm taking this school because it's the best football school, but it might not be the best fit for them. Yep. And that's, it's a big issue at the end of the day.
And I think that's so important. I'm glad you brought that up because you can't just look at it from the lens of football. You've got to look at the entire experience. Is the campus the right place for you? Do they have a major that you would want? What's the social life like on this campus? Are you going to make responsible decisions? There's so much that goes into it. And I feel that oftentimes, especially in this day and age where high school kids are pressing and trying to jump on offers early, that they're making the wrong decision. And to your point, they get there a year later, they're in the portal looking to go elsewhere. I do want to shift gears here real quick. We got about 5 minutes left. I do want you to put your college coach hat back on. And I have these conversations with people all the time, Jeff, and you and I have had these conversations to a degree, but how do you regulate what's going on in college football right now? I feel that NIL is untouchable. You're not fixing that. but I feel like you can fix the portal. Is there any type of resolution coming when it comes to the portal specifically, and regulating it so that it's not as insane as it is right now? I mean, you've got guys that are jumping into the portal twice a year now. It's crazy.
I do think it will slightly die down very soon because all these kids who are granted the extra year of COVID will be gone. Um, but it's going to be really difficult. Like there's going to have to be true legislation from the NCAA that will dictate something. I think it's gonna be tough. I think right now, I've talked to a lot of people, and like the purest form of college football is probably the Ivy League and Patriot League because you see so few kids go in the portal. They can recruit 90 to 99% fully from high school kids, and that to me is like what everyone used to envision college football as.
Yeah.
Like that's as real as it gets with those people. But I think like at the FBS Power Four level, like in the transfer portal and that, like NIL is now like 60% of the recruiting process for those older kid transfers, especially the grad transfers and all those type of things. So, the gap between Power Four and Group of Five is probably only going to widen, which I see, which I think is a big thing. And even with the Group of Five schools or Group of Six or whatever it will be now, like the schools that have the strongest collectives will make the biggest difference when it comes to being able to bring in older players. So I think that will be a really big piece. And the guys who have been doing it at UMass, I think they've created a pretty strong collective for the Group of Five level with the Midnight Ride Collective. I think they've done a really good job with Corey and Tim there. But it's going to make a difference, especially for the older kids. The high school kids at the Power Four level, the NIL impacts it, but at the Group of Five level, the high school kids, not really. At least in today's world, where the rate this is going 1 or 2 years from now can look drastically different from present day. But like I think the most important thing in the recruiting process for coaches is really getting to know these kids, and it's like figuring out how kids deal with adversity. So if you have kids that struggle with adversity and they're coming to your school, you haven't done like as thorough of your homework as you needed, like those might be the kids who when things get tough, move the quickest. And a lot of that sometimes just geographically, when you're signing kids that are so far away from home and then things don't go as planned and no one that they knew before they got there is there, it makes it easier to bounce around. So schools like UMass done a really good job recruiting locally, whether it's in New England and things like that. And then they've also seen on the flip side some really good players who went somewhere else and now have transferred back home and have really helped them. Where last year you look at like Anthony Simpson, who's one of the top Group of Five receivers in the country. Tyson Pumachan did an unbelievable job before he got injured. Tyler Martin played a role with them as well. You've seen all these guys who are national to semi-national recruits in high school, and they've had the opportunity and for whatever reason have come back somewhere in their local area and will be able to be pretty big instant impact guys in some capacity.
Yeah, and you bring up such a good point about the collectives now, because that's really what it comes down to, and there will be a clear division even in the Group of Five or Group of Six eventually. I think there'll be a real clear line in terms of the programs that can spend and have legitimate collectives, and the programs that are going to try to do it the old-fashioned way through high school recruiting and hope that they can get some guys and may not necessarily be into the money more than they are the education, let's say. But you bring up a good point too, that the Ivy League is really the purest form of football left in many ways at the collegiate level, because they're still building rosters with high school recruiting. You got to play your 4 years. You can grad transfer and play somewhere else. But I do think that and I was talking about that with the director of football ops at Brown a couple of weeks ago when I did my spring visit, about how it is the purest level of football left, and it's going to still be the purest league in the sense that guys are going there because they want the education first and foremost, and then they get the Division I football experience as well. Final question here for you, Jeff. Obviously, it's we're getting into busy season here. We got the showcases coming up, camp season, and eventually we'll get into training camp later on this summer. But what's on the docket here for the remainder of this offseason for Tabor Academy football?
Yeah, I think the goal for us is just for our guys to get better every day, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's just with camaraderie or whatever sport they're playing right now. there's a chance we may add 1 or 2 guys late, but I think we were really happy with where we're at. It's a really good group of guys. I think we're able to, not that we're totally changing things, but I think we're able to fill the holes that we needed, which is important too. And then we're extremely excited to get back some kids who worked extremely hard, had very successful seasons this past year. So I think we're in a really good spot, but it'll also be exciting because our schedule, we're moving from the ISL 9 group to the ISL
I was
7.
going to say, I didn't mention that, but yeah, you guys are moving up.
The challenge only gets greater. But like I say to our kids, anything worthwhile never comes easy. So we're excited for the challenge. We'll see how it goes. But I think we're in a spot where we should be very competitive very quickly. So we're excited about it.
Well, selfishly, we love it in New England Football Journal that you're moving up to the ISL 7 because that's going to mean you have an even better schedule than you had last year, and there's going to be some great games and it's coverage opportunities for us. So selfishly, we love it, and we can't wait to get to see more of you guys. But Jeff, I want to say thank you for taking the time, my friend. It's always great to see you, brother. You do a tremendous job in every program you've spearheaded. You've done a great job running that program. But the biggest thing is, and I'm not saying this because I know you and you're a friend, you take care of your kids. Your kids go to college, get an education, and play football. And it's a testament to you and the job you do, my friend. Hat tip to you as always. But thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks. That is Jeff Moore, head football coach at Tabor Academy. That'll do it for this episode of the Coaches Chat. For Coach Moore, I'm John Zernitas. Till next time.